This is the peak of wilderness building. A man survives in the wilderness for a long time. He makes bricks by hand and extracts lime, and builds a shelter with underfloor heating. He even invents a method of soil-less farming, an automatic fishing device. He has completely achieved a self-sufficient life. This is a very determined who went into the wild without any equipment. In order to survive, he plans to make himself a few handy tools. He skillfully pulls on the vine. He quickly gets a decent container. Then he collects some high-quality clay. To survive in the wild, you can't live without water. Next, he is going to make a clay pot for water. After slightly carving out the shape, it's time for the familiar fire making by rubbing wood together. Although the production crew didn't provide a lighter this time, he used a method of creating fire from prehistoric times. Even the hardest wood can't withstand his effort. After successfully getting a flame going, he can dry out the clay pot. Then he heats it up to set its shape. Although the shape wasn't controlled well, the clay pot is successfully molded. Then he sharpens the charred wood to collect the clay to build a sturdy enough shelter. First, he planned to build a brick kiln. He used his clay to shape it to the desired size. With the support of branches, he makes a bottom air vent. This dense gray clay is used for the kiln walls. It prevents cracking at high temperatures. Then he can stack the clay up layer by layer. This gives him enough space for firing. As they say, rely on mountains to eat mountains, rely on water to eat water. To survive in the wild, you need to have an eye for detail. These dry trees hide wild crystallizes inside. Whether its nutritional value or taste, it's top-notch. Just wrap it in leaves, then cover it with a thick layer of loam. Whether it's a staple food or a daily snack, it's a great choice. After replenishing his energy, he mysteriously found this stone. Just a little grinding on the edges. It has become a sharp tool for cutting trees. Unexpectedly, he entered the Stone Age so quickly. The big tree was cut down quickly. After successfully getting a piece of wood, if you find it too troublesome, just use a war stomp. Then he sharpened a small stone chisel to carve out the wood little by little. Because the chisel is not long enough, he will use charcoal to burn the inside. Until both ends are burnt through, he can embed the handle in the wood. He carves it a little with the chisel. This gives him a custom-made handle. As they say, there are always more problems than solutions. Matching his 35-foot feet, he gives this rope a unique flavor. Thus, a shadow axe descends upon the world. With its existence, even these 2.5-year-old trees become vulnerable. Even precise cuts can be easily handled. He splits the cutwood in half. He carves the ends into pegs again. He burns the eyes on the other two pieces of wood with charcoal. This allows him to combine them together. After a little binding, he gets the mold for making bricks. To make it easier to remove the mold, he needs to sprinkle charcoal ash evenly. With Wuru's help, a few simple steps can give you a neat brick. The mark of human progress is learning to use tools, running ahead of his evolution. Otherwise, it might be the one lying on the tree that collapses. Because the kiln capacity is limited, he needs to put the first batch of bricks in the kiln first. The firing process usually takes 4 or 5 hours. While waiting, he uses clay to mold a large water jar. Soon, the first batch of bricks is fired. You can tell by the crisp sound that the quality of the fired bricks is very high. It seems this little guy isn't a stranger to being kicked out of his home. Although each firing requires a lot of time, but the moment you get the finished product is very rewarding. To improve the efficiency of firing, he starts a small fire next to it. He plans to make a blower to increase the fire's intensity. He wraps the stick with clay. He gets a sealed tube shape. Then he uses aerodynamics to shape the air hood. Finally, he seals the air outlet. After installing the pipe, he cuts bark according to the desired airflow. Then he cuts the branch in half. He clamps it and secures it with a rope. He tries it out. He almost catches a cold. To generate the maximum wind power, you need to ensure the air hood is as airtight as possible. Then he assembles a frame to secure the axle. Using the principle of bowstring, he can create a lever that saves effort. With the help of the blower, the flame temperature can reach 1000 degrees Celsius. Then he collects some tree bark. He plans to burn it to produce quicklime. He just needs to set the bark on fire. After it burns completely, he collects the white ash. He filters out the large particles with a wicker basket. Then he adds some water and stirs evenly. Then he rolled it into a small circle. He can put them in the kiln one by one to speed up the firing process. He collects some wood. He piles them together to make charcoal. This charcoal should be enough for him for a while. The blower continuously pumps air in, allowing the temperature inside the kiln to reach around 1100 degrees Celsius. Under the influence of high temperature, the calcium carbonate inside decomposes into calcium oxide. This is quicklime we all know. Finally, he uses a dissolving bone cotton pump technique to grind it into powder. To get cement with good adhesion, he specially goes to the river to collect fine river sand. After mixing it thoroughly with lime, he can add water and stir it into cement. After all these preparations, he can finally start building the shelter. He first uses a stick to dig out the outline of the shelter. Then he collects some stones. Adding water is to prevent the cement from cracking. Next, he uses stones to build the foundation of the shelter along the dug ditch. With a solid foundation, he can start stacking bricks to build the walls. These simple layers of bricks It took him a long time to build. After the cement dries a little, he can level out the soil inside. Then he continues to build up the walls. Considering the problem of having no clothes in winter, he leaves a fireplace vent on one side. At this point, he's used up all the bricks he made earlier. Next, he starts the process of making more bricks and cement. He has the experience from before, so this time he gets a whole bunch of bricks quickly. Unbeknownst to him, the walls are now high enough to provide privacy. To make up for his height disadvantage, he makes a simple scaffold. He uses a piece of wood to take the place of eyebrows. Next, he can build the outline of the roof. Because there are no lighting facilities, he isn't in a hurry to build the roof. He makes the bed first. After building the frame of the bed with bricks, he fills the inside with dirt. This saves on building materials. Then he stacks bricks to create a trench. The other end connects to the fireplace. He covers the pipe with stones. Finally, he covers it with soil. Next, he starts building the roof. He collects a bunch of straight logs. He first stacks some cement on the wall. Then he placed the logs one by one. Fortunately, the brick wall below was built neatly. It allowed the logs to be placed parallel to each other. After getting the roof frame, he bent bamboo strips. This gave him a mold for tiles. To ensure the tiles were waterproof, he chose finer clay as the raw material. After each tile was made, he had to drill installation holes in the top beforehand. Then he placed them by the fireplace to dry. If they weren't dried before firing, the clay would easily crack. Fortunately, he had plenty of time. The first batch of tiles was fired successfully. Since each tile was hard-earned, he was extra careful when stacking them. He decided to use banana trees to secure the tiles. This plant is rich in plant fibers. He used a stick to flatten it bit by bit. Then he washed away the excess impurities. He repeated this process 49 times. This gave him plant fibers of uniform thickness. Finally, he dried them in the shade for a day and a night. Then he could roll and twist them into rope. This type of rope is strong and durable. Even if you use it for 10 years, there is no problem, thanks to each tile being molded. The result was very neat. By stacking them crisscross, he ensured both aesthetics and effectively blocked rain. The roof wasn't even halfway done, but the tiles he'd made were already gone. He quickly started making more. The tiles for the final roof needed special crafting. He used the dirt pit he dug beforehand to mold the tiles into an arc shape. He let them air dry for a week. Then he could fire them in the kiln. Finally, he carefully placed them in the center of the roof. The red roof was complete. His project was finally finished. Then he spread clay evenly on the ground. He embedded bricks to make the floor. The good thing about being in the wild is all the raw materials are free. This allowed him to produce these bricks without limit. Even the empty space in front of the house was upgraded. Although the little house looks simple and rustic, if you were to place it in ancient times, it would be a proper mansion. Next, he cut down a 2.5-year-old tree. He planned to use it to make a door. The first step was to carve pegs on both ends of the wood. Then he used charcoal to burn holes on the side. He nailed to branches to act as axles. After carving holes in the door frame, he could install the door hinges. To make it easier to drill holes in the wood, he sharpened a small stone. Then he clamped it to the end of a stick and secured it with rope. He then ground a tile into a circular disc. After drilling a hole in the center, he put it on the axle as a counterweight. Finally, he tied both ends with rope. This created a very efficient drilling tool. With the help of his drill, he quickly drilled small holes in the wood. He then secured them with wooden nails. This resulted in the door frame. I was dumbfounded watching the process. Seeing the outcome, I could only say, that's impressive. Next, he gathered some dried reeds. He would use them to weave a mat. With continued effort, his life was slowly getting on track. To fill his stomach, he raided an ant hill. After collecting the ant larvae, he cooked them using a beggar's chicken method. They were bursting with flavor. They were like the caviar of the land. Of course, to live long-term in the wild, you need to solve the problem of a stable food source. He dug a pit in front of his house. He laid bricks at the bottom. Then he added a layer of wild cement. He gradually built the sides up. He was making a pond. After all food depends on water. Finally, he paved the surrounding area with bricks. Now it was starting to look like a luxury villa. To prevent animals from entering his yard, he collected many stones. He would use them to build a fence around his yard. The easiest meat to get in the wild is fish. He used a tile to grind the stone he made for such discs. Then he gathered some resin. He melted it over fire. This could be used as an adhesive. He combined the 4 discs together. This created a wild fishing reel. Then he tied 3 sticks to the side. This was for later securing it. As for the hook, he could use a branch from a bamboo plant. With everything ready, he could secure the reel to the post. To save time waiting, he hung 10 stones on the stick. So if there was a fish on the hook, the reel would cause the 10 stones to constantly hit the clay pot. I have to say, Hai's a master of time management. He casts the hook, then goes about his business. Everything automatically sets off the alarm. He can seamlessly connect it to water the pond. As soon as he said it, it happened. The reel made a clear tapping sound from the taut fishing line. It looked like a big fish. Sure enough, he caught a catfish as thick as his arm on the first try. He just threw the hook back in the water. The alarm sounded again. Just a day later, he caught half a bucket of fish. He could raise them and enjoy them slowly. But you can't just eat fish. You have to think about a balanced diet. So he thought outside the box. He used those clay pots with holes. He planned to develop soil-less farming techniques. After the clay pots were fired, he cut the sweet potatoes into small pieces. Before planting, he needed to put the sweet potato pieces in a damp place to wait for them to sprout. He would regularly water them. When the sweet potato sprouts appeared, he could transplant them into small pots. Once done, he would use a stick to pierce them. He would place them on the pond so that they touched the water. The fish waste would provide nutrients for the plants. They served as fertilizer. He could feed the leftover sweet potatoes to the fish. This was a perfect ecological system. It seemed like a self-sufficient life was just around the corner. He is idle, would walk around the wild area every day. Today, he stumbled upon a nest of quail eggs. This was like finding a gold mine. He was lucky. It seemed like he would have Orleans cuisine soon. As time passed, the sweet potato sprouts grew into strong plants, and his hair grew long. He successfully used soil-less farming. He got plump sweet potatoes. Today marked the 500th day since he came to the wild. To celebrate his perseverance, he had to prepare a sumptuous dinner. First, he mashed the sweet potatoes. Then he made a sweet potato pizza. Then he caught the biggest fish. He directly put it over the fire to roast. He had been coveting the fruit trees in front of his house, so he used his masterful skills. To weave a fruit picker, he just had to pull the rope. The fruit would be in his hand. No more talking, let's do it. He effortlessly collected 500 grams of wild starfruit. He cut it up and put it in a bowl. The roast fish was ready. He peeled off the skin to reveal the tender fish meat inside. He took the fish meat out and put it in a bowl. He added some water and put it over the fire to stew. He now was no longer just surviving. You could tell from his bulging muscles that he was living a flavorful life here. In the coming time, this land will see the rise of a new race.